Notre Dame 27, Indiana 17. Dan Rubenstein, the very first college football playoff game in the 12-team era.
Yes.
Is now officially in the books as of Friday night. Notre Dame comes away the victor. What are your thoughts?
A very solid win for Notre Dame. Even better than solid, I would say. And a very impressive win for Notre Dame, all things considered. That they were in control of this game, what felt like from the jump. That even though it started in kind of a sloppy way with a Riley Leonard pass being knocked down or knocked up, as it were, for an interception.
Right.
And then Notre Dame coming up with its own interception deep in their own territory. So an uneven start. Maybe there was some jitters. It was the cold. It was the first of the 12-team playoff. There's like the in-state element to it all. That Notre Dame was the team that had the talent, had the preparation, had the execution. In bigger moments, they were the team that came to play. They were the team that got a huge explosion play early from Jeremiah Love with that run up the sideline when they were pushed back after that interception. And they were the team built for, and they were the team that had the ability to win this game, not necessarily going away via the scoreboard by the end of the game, but that it was a 20-3 game. That's if you want to talk about what the actual rhythm of the game was, it was a 20-3 game that ended 27-17.
I think that's right. I mean, one thing that struck me, and we talked about it a lot on the live stream that we did, is the play calling on the Indiana side was very questionable.
Decisions in general.
And that's not to say if it were different, they would have won. I don't think I want to pin it quite to that degree on the play calling. I just think Notre Dame was the better team. I think we saw that on Friday night. But, for all of Curt Cignetti's bravado and for all of the trash talk, it felt like a very timid game plan. It felt like they were running when they should have thrown it. There was one series in particular later on in the first half. We were talking about it on stream where you run it on third and, long enough. Third and long enough. The thought is, okay, the only reason you're doing that is because you're going to go for it on fourth down. You're trying to get to fourth and manageable, which I think would have been the right call at that point in time. It was something like 14-0 Notre Dame. Instead, he pulls the offense off the field. He kicks the 3 points. Those 3 points stayed on the scoreboard until the very end when they scored a few in garbage time.
Right.
It just felt like that was a continuing trend throughout. They had moments where they were able to run the football. They had a few nice completions over the middle, but this was not an explosive offense by Indiana by any stretch of the imagination. Notre Dame was able to contain them. Notre Dame was quicker to the edge. You could see that Notre Dame clearly had an advantage, I think, along the defensive line. And this was sort of the game that I think we feared from the standpoint of, now we're going to have to hear how Indiana didn't belong.
Right.
I don't know if I truly believe that. I think Indiana deserved to be there. Mm-hmm. That's a separate conversation for a different day. But I feel like as a result of this showing, that chorus is going to grow a lot louder of people saying, see, they didn't belong on that same field with Notre Dame.
And you know what? You can say that South Carolina, Alabama, Ole Miss, maybe give Notre Dame more of a game. They were in control of their ability to get to the point in their own season to give Notre Dame more of a game and couldn't do it. And so here we are. They were willing to accept the SEC check for all of their efforts. Here we are. As for the game itself, I think you're right. Indiana had opportunities. Indiana had no conference championship game to prepare for. Neither did Notre Dame. And 3 weeks or whatever of prep since the old Oak and Bucket game gave us a game plan that wasn't good enough. That didn't work out. That didn't confuse Notre Dame. And even though coming into this game, we knew Indiana wasn't a team that had game changers at receiver or an offense that we felt great about against a very good defense after what we saw them do or not really do against Ohio State. But you figured there'd be something in that game plan that at least in the first half might give Notre Dame some fits. There wasn't. And
I mean, Curt Cignetti on the set of Game Day talking about how they're kicking everybody's ass that they play. Yeah. And to go out like this with a whimper, look, it's disappointing to say the least. Now, I will say this for Indiana. Mm-hmm. Indiana gave Notre Dame some fits along the offensive line.
They did. That was, Notre Dame's offensive line Indiana's defensive line, defensive front gave them fits. Agree.
Riley Leonard took some shots in this game, and this is something that I think we need to consider because kind of lost in the shuffle now of Carson Beck getting hurt, of Gunnar Stockton being the quarterback for Georgia moving forward. A lot of folks have kind of panned Georgia. I think in light of this performance by the Notre Dame offensive line against a defensive line that is not as good as Georgia, even if they're better than what the Irish have seen for most of this season,
right?
It raises some real questions. Is Georgia going to do to Notre Dame's front what they did to Texas back in October, which was completely overwhelm them, change the game, and never really give Texas a shot to do anything downfield? That suddenly is a concern for me moving forward now into that Sugar Bowl matchup with Georgia. The other thing that I would add is I'm wearing all my Notre Dame regalia here.
Of course.
Right? Notre Dame didn't show a whole lot offensively. I mean, this is the kind of game that they want to play. That's kind of their preferred MO wherever possible. They don't need to be flashy. They don't want to be flashy. They were able to rip off some big runs. Jeremiah Love had the really big 98-yard touchdown run earlier in the game, which really set things on a nice course for Notre Dame. They did more of the same throughout the course of this one. They were not taking deep shots with Riley Leonard. They were not using Riley Leonard a whole lot in the rushing game.
In the traditional way they had this year, yeah.
Which is something that you and I talked at length about with our friend Jeff Schwartz, who also came on our live stream when we were doing it during this football game. I don't know if they're saving him. I don't know if it's they felt they had this one in the bag. I don't know if it just wasn't part of the game plan, but that was something that truly was minimized to a degree that I did not expect. It's nice to see him be fresh now, fresher than expected, let's say, going into that Georgia game, which is going to take place on New Year's Day. We'll see how the game plan looks. My hunch is it's going to have to look a lot different if they want to have the same degree of success against the Bulldogs.
Right. I think that's right. And Notre Dame now has the advantage of seeing like, okay, what can we do to correct what we're doing on offense against what should be an even better defensive front in Georgia. So now they have that ability to self-diagnose and, get into the screen game a little bit more, get into misdirection a little bit more, running horizontally a little bit more, which isn't necessarily the best thing against Georgia and the athletes that Georgia has, but this hasn't been the greatest team in terms of stopping the run this year in Georgia. They really got after Quinn Ewers, obviously, a couple different times in the passing game. But yeah, you're absolutely right that if you are going to parse and pick apart what I consider to be a very impressive Notre Dame performance, all things considered, you can say, well, one of their touchdowns was a singularly great play from the offensive line and Jeremiah Love. It wasn't a drive. It wasn't a series of 5 explosive plays. It wasn't a long, exhausting drive. It was one great play. Yeah. I do not hold that against Notre Dame. No. That is a feather in Notre Dame's cap. But in terms of touchdown drives in this game, there were 2 of them.
Right.
2 true touchdown drives for Notre Dame. So I credit Indiana's front. I credit Notre Dame not really having an offense built to string together 5 explosive passing plays or something like that and scoring a touchdown, which is great because a huge part of life in general is self-awareness. Notre Dame knows itself, and that's a good thing. All I'm saying is I don't know what you can get away with moving forward, whether it's Georgia, whether it's Penn State, whether it's whoever, Texas, Oregon, Ohio State, take your pick. So I'm curious about that. Notre Dame checked most every other box for me in this game. Their safeties were coming up against the run, great. Their corners were in the faces of Indiana receivers all the time, up the sideline, across the middle. Whatever Indiana tried to do, there were golden helmets everywhere, which again is a great thing, especially considering that this is a Notre Dame team that wasn't necessarily tested all year. We knew they had the talent to hang with pretty much everybody.
Yeah.
But it's good to see now that, okay, this Indiana is, if nothing else, they're a good Big Ten team. Maybe not a great Big Ten team. They're a good Big Ten team. Notre Dame, for a lot of this game, showed that Indiana didn't fully belong on the Indiana offense didn't belong on the field with Notre Dame's defense. That's a great thing.
In the end, Indiana finishes with a shade under 300 total yards, but a lot of that came in what we would consider garbage time. Notre Dame's defense was fairly dominant in this one.
Great onside kick.
Great onside kick. We love a good onside kick here on the Solid Verbal. Yeah. And almost got a second one after a second garbage time touchdown, but that wasn't to be. Again, Indiana loses this one by 10. Notre Dame dominated by, 10 minutes and change in possession. They were I think, the better team across the board here. You could see they were quicker to the edge. They just had better athletes. They had better depth. Some injuries that I think we need to take a closer look at as we go through the holiday season here. Riley Mills, notably Notre Dame's team captain along the defensive line. That would be a big loss if he were out for any extended period of time, especially against a team like Georgia. But we'll have about 10 days now to kind of sort through this and figure out how we feel about Notre Dame moving forward against Georgia Bulldogs. That sets up a matchup that I think a lot of people had in their brackets, and it'll be a fun one to break down. All things being said, look, a great season for Indiana. The debate can rage on whether or not Indiana should have been here, should have not been here. I think you and I both agree that we have no problem with them being in this game. Sure. It was not a good game plan for them. It was not their best showing for sure. But all things considered, the job that Curt Cignetti did in year one is definitely worthy of him getting Coach of the Year. So kudos to the Indiana Hoosiers, and kudos to Marcus Freeman for rebounding after that loss early on against Northern Illinois to get back to the point now where they're playing in the playoff in a quarterfinal in the Sugar Bowl against a team like the Georgia Bulldogs. So it'll be fun to see what happens moving forward.
If I'm an Indiana fan, first of all, in March, I'll be thrilled. It's not a fun night to be an Indiana fan in this moment. I have the Coach of the Year, and my team is down 20-3, 3-possession game with 10, 11 minutes left in the fourth quarter, 4th and 11, midfield, not backed up on your own 11. Midfield. We got to get going. We got to get scoring. This is 3 possessions. We need 3 touchdowns and 2 stops. Or 3 scores, mind you. 3 scores, a couple of stops. We don't have a lot of time. Notre Dame can just grind out long drives. We got to hit the gas. And they punt.
They punted.
Coach of the Year. We're going to kick everybody's ass. Curt Cignetti. Punt in that moment.
Yeah,
I hated that moment if I'm an Indiana fan. I hated that broadcasting to Notre Dame. Like, well, we're going to see what happens. We're going to, we figure we can get 3 or 4 more. What? Don't do that. Not like that. You got to go. You absolutely have to go in that moment. I mean, we talk about the decision making. We talk about the offensive game plan. We talk about Indiana constantly just not being able to find grass, especially in that first half. In that moment, I don't know. That's the season right there.
That's tough.
And
that's tough.
I thought that was a cowardly moment for Indiana football.
Let us know your thoughts on this game. Let us know your thoughts on Indiana's season. Let us know your thoughts on how you project Notre Dame moving forward in this big Sugar Bowl game. Again, that's New Year's Day, 8:45. Their traditional time slot.
Yeah.
For the Sugar Bowl. We will be doing this all weekend. We've got 3 more playoff games to dissect. Dan Rubenstein. I will talk to you all soon, okay? Stay solid.
Peace. Ty did like 100 push-ups, by the way, tonight. It was great. Every Notre Dame score.
It really hurt.
He's going to be sore.